And good morning. I'll be with you shortly.
Hey, what are we talking about today?
We're talking about Cop City and Chris Carr deciding, certain Antifa elements, maybe they should get a little RICO too.
Good morning. Oh, I should have let you fade at first. An abrupt transition. Good morning.
Good morning.
Unverified bear with first blood. Good morning, sunshine. And I see Danny's with us, and GCM. Man, GCM missed us on Monday. You should have been here. It's your week. We're talking about cops for a third day in a row.
Just real quick, if you know, you know. John Ward is back.
Yeah.
The return of the world champions.
The return of the world champions. Hell, that might just be our show tomorrow, because tomorrow is Thursday, and we haven't had a total win Thursday in a hot damn minute.
No, we have not. And he did take the time to make some jokes at Don Lemon's expense.
If you know, you know. And if you don't know, go watch some old John Ward videos from, circa 2019, 2020, especially the ones that are entitled X Ends Y's Career. Those are frickin' amazing. So this morning we're talking about a local story, a little local flavor. And this is one that's been going on for a hot minute. But we've got some actual movement on the story. So, little background. There is a movement in Georgia, in Atlanta, Georgia, centered around the building of the Atlanta Public Safety Training Center, colloquially and locally referred to as Cop City. And Cop City has been somewhat controversial, because, of course, lefties hate good things. What Cop City is, as I understand it, is essentially what the Army refers to as a Mount Center, a modern urban tactical training facility. They're building a training center where they will have essentially an unoccupied structural series, basically an urban facility where police, firefighters, paramedics, first responders can do joint training operations where they go into scenarios with actors playing the locals and playing the victims and playing the criminals, what we would call the Op 4 in a mount center, to train. And they're going to be bringing in cops and first responders of all sorts from all across the country to do serious training in this place. Now, the criticism, there are two major criticisms that the protesters have. One, they're concerned about, so they say, the forest that's being torn down to put up the facility. And two, they're concerned that this will be a step toward further militarizing the police. Now, I'll be honest, I have some concerns myself about the further militarization of the police, but, and as GCM will tell you, one of the problems that we have with police today is their unbelievable lack of training. Your average police officer is woefully undertrained and underinformed. Now, this training facility is going to focus on tactical applications and response to situations. What are the physical activities involved in dealing with specific high risk, high danger scenarios? And if I'm being honest, I'd like to see a hell of a lot more training put into police actually knowing the law and understanding what citizens' rights are and being better informed and equipped to deal with citizens and not violate rights. You know, let's get down the number of bad shootings. Let's get down the number of false arrests. Because there is a thread of this incredibly toxic kind of attitude that goes through the police in our country at large, and that's the axiomatic statement that they believe you can beat the charges, but you can't beat the ride. You're familiar with this expression, I'm sure. You beat the charges, but you can't beat the ride.
Who, me?
Right.
What makes you think I'd be familiar with that?
You might be able to. What it means, obviously, is you might be able to win in court because the cops might even know they're obviously wrong, but you still end up going in handcuffs and in the back of a car and into a jail cell. And even if you
denied
beat the
bond
charges,
at first appearance,
right?
You might sit in jail for a couple of days, a couple of weeks, a couple of months. And then
the bitch about how you can't beat the ride, we're not talking about a mere inconvenience here. You might beat the charges and still lose your job and resultantly lose your house, etc., etc. Now,
what makes you think I know about that?
I can't imagine.
That's all I'm going to say about it, ladies and gentlemen, but I might have a smidge of personal experience.
I looked over at the monitor for a second and was reminded, we got new stickers. Huh? What has happened is for the last just over 2 years, there has been an occupied position held by protesters, and they have referred to it as an autonomous zone, built physical structures. You'll have to understand, with the Stop Cop City movement, they've gone into the forest in question and built physical structures, tree houses, right? Basically, they've nailed and screwed some pallets up in the trees and put tents over them, and there are people living out there holding the position.
That's good for the environment.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Exactly. Yeah, kind of like those wonderful memes we're seeing where people are holding up hundreds of masks that they got out of the ocean water, and it says, "But at least we banned the straws." Paper straws wrapped in plastic. winning. So the new development is just delicious. And I've talked enough. Would you please read the article?
Sure. Attorney General accuses training center protesters of anarchy. Charges...
Anarchy!
Right. Charges 61 in RICO case. Georgia Attorney General Chris Carr is charging 61 people. By the way, this comes from WSB. This is local reporting. We're using them on purpose. Georgia Attorney General...
Not the biggest fan of the local fish wrapper since, ever since Rush went, shall we say, off the air. God's rest him. WSB has...
Well, God called in the loan.
Yeah. Yeah, God called in the marker. Well, talent on loan from God.
Right, yeah. Anyhow, Georgia Attorney General Chris Carr is charging 61 people with racketeering as his office is cracking down on what he says is a criminal enterprise to stop the construction of the Atlanta Public Safety Training Center. The indictment says that... Help. Thanks. The indictment says that the people tried to stop construction at the training site by any means necessary, and that includes violence and money laundering.
Bam!
So, we can circle back to it, but, I can see how violence stops the construction. I'm not saying you should commit violence, but I can see how violence stops the construction. But how does money laundering stop? Just wondering. Channel 2 Action News says... What? Yes?
Oh, no. Keep reading.
Channel 2 Action...
He's going to explain that.
Channel 2 Action News was there in May when Atlanta police raided a northeast Atlanta home, arresting 3 people. Marlon Couts, Adele McLean, and Savannah Patterson. Now, all 3 are featured prominently in the indictments of 61 people Georgia's Attorney General insists were part of a criminal conspiracy to stop the construction of the Atlanta Public Safety Training Center. At a news conference Tuesday afternoon, Carr said that the 3 and their organization Defend the Atlanta Forest raised money from unsuspecting donors and then used that money to fund the occupation of the construction site. As a result, thousands of good faith donors gave millions of their own money to a certain charitable cause, and their funds were instead spent on ammunition, surveillance materials, and a drone. Carr said many of the 61 engaged in acts of violence against police and the contractors building the site. On multiple occasions, members of the group torched and caused other damage to buildings and construction equipment, including excavators and bulldozers. The Cop City Vote Coalition...
Not to mention the cop they shot.
Well, look... The Cop City Vote Coalition, a group of people trying to get a citywide vote on the training center, blasted the indictments, saying in a statement that these charges seek to intimidate protesters, legal observers, and bail funds alike, and send a chilling message that any dissent to Cop City will be punished. How do you intimidate bail funds?
That's a really interesting statement.
Yeah, please, the irony is not lost on me. No. Carr contends that Defend the Atlanta Forest and the criminal defendants conspired to halt construction by any means necessary. By intimidating bail funds, sure. Members of Defend the Atlanta Forest subscribe to a philosophy of anarchy. They hold a core belief that society should abolish police, government, and private business. Carr's office decided to charge these 61 defendants in Fulton County, not DeKalb County, where the training center is located. Under state law, he can do that with a RICO case. In June, DeKalb County District Attorney Sherry Boston withdrew her office from prosecuting any of these cases. That's why the AG's office took over.
There's a lot to talk about right here.
There is a lot.
There is a hell of a lot to talk about.
There is a lot to unpack.
And you know what? We're going to do as much as we can. We've got 15 minutes before the end of the show, but the first house I'm shooting today is vacant, so if we need to push over by 10 or 15, I'm down. The first thing I want to touch on here, you mentioned you made a comment about the money laundering thing. I want to touch on that real quick. Carr says, and I'm actually going to push back on Carr a little bit here. He says, as a result, thousands of good faith donors gave millions of their own money to a certain charitable cause, and their funds instead were spent on ammunition, surveillance materials, and a drone. He uses the language here, a certain charitable cause, and doesn't mention which particular charitable cause. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that if it is the case that the cause that those donations were made to was explicitly labeled, this is the Stop Cop City cause, that it's kind of like doxing. You knew what you were getting into, right? If you send money to a leftist organization and you don't think you're funding violence, terrorism, and insurrectionism, you haven't been paying attention. If you send money to fund something like BLM or Antifa or Planned Parenthood, and you don't expect that you're paying for firebombs, then you are woefully underinformed. This isn't complicated. So I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that these good faith donors are getting exactly what they were expecting.
We lost the chat. Can you?
We did? Oh,
yes,
I see what you
bumped it. You fat fingered it.
Gotcha. So that should roll now, and that should roll now. So that was the first thing I wanted to touch on.
Can I just say real quick?
Yes, please.
If I give money to a charitable organization and they buy bullets with it, I don't necessarily feel like I've been swindled.
Correct.
What'd you buy bullets for? Because this is America? Okay. Yep.
Because they're bullets? Why'd you buy bullets? Because I'm losing faith in the U.S. dollar?
Because I got a sale. Because they happen to have a sale on 00 buck, and oh, okay, all right. No, we're good.
It's like, why'd you buy ice cream? I wanted fucking ice cream.
It was hot.
So the next one I want to touch on multiple occasions, the members of the group torched and caused other damage to buildings and construction equipment, including excavators and bulldozers. So this article and this incident is, the charges are as of yesterday, or the day before.
Yesterday.
This is a shiny new article. And the so this is ex post facto from the shooting of a police officer. Now, in fairness, I will mention that one protester was killed in that fight, but they engaged in a gunfight with the police. This was back in, I think, January. In reference to that, we've got this article from CNN from January 18th. One person was fatally shot and a state trooper wounded near site of Atlanta's controversial Cop City project. And if you were wondering about the bias going on here, it says one person was fatally shot and a state trooper wounded near site of Atlanta's controversial Cop City project. There is a problem here with the order discendi, because it's CNN wants you to read this headline and believe that the police showed up and murdered somebody, and then they returned fire on the police. Right? But that's why they put it in this order for that reason. And even the first sentence, one person was killed and a Georgia state trooper was wounded in an incident near the site of a proposed Atlanta law enforcement training center. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation said activists have previously clashed with law enforcement the site of the planned $90 million 85-acre center, which is to be built in a forested area in a neighborhood county. Opponents of the project, dubbed Cop City by activists, have camped out for months in the forest in an attempt to halt construction. At this point, by the way, they had been there for over a year. It's been right about 2 years now. On Wednesday morning, the GBI and several other law enforcement agencies conducted a planned clearing operation at the site to remove people in the area, and an individual allegedly, without warning, shot a Georgia State Patrol trooper.
Well, that's only 4 or 5 paragraphs down before you get to
3 paragraphs down before you get to what actually happened. Oh, the police came to remove you from where you were illegally occupying territory. And like I explained yesterday when I was talking about blocking public roads, that is the conduct of war. The holding of a war is conducted when you put boots on the ground and with force of violence hold territory and deny access to that territory to the enemy. That is war. When you put a trailer across a public thoroughfare, you are not protesting. You are conducting war against the people of that country. When you occupy a space, right? If somebody comes and occupies a space inside a sovereign nation and denies access to that space to the local government, what they have done is they have initiated the conduct of war. They've established a base, and they have used the force and threat of violence to maintain and hold that position. That is the conduct of war. When that war is being conducted by local nationals of the host country, that is what is called insurrection. That is insurrection by definition. What these police officers were doing, the only legitimate and intelligible criticism one could possibly have is that it should have been the National Guard or the active duty army conducting the operation instead of local police, because these are not protesters. These are insurrectionists. These people are no different than the ousted Taliban or Al-Qaeda or any other institution that is officially dedicated to the conduct of war against their own country. That's simple.
So can you click back over real quick? No. I mean the screen.
Oh, to the story?
Yeah. This is how cynical I've gotten. Whenever I see Atlanta's controversial Cop City project, like controversial.
It's not controversial.
So
communists hating a thing is not the definition of controversial. They're communists. All they do is hate things.
Well,
they certainly don't go to work.
Yeah. Well, especially ever since, the ban on transgender care for children, that's controversial. Is it really though? Is it really? Sure, there's some controversy that's been artificially injected into the situation in an attempt, but no controversy. In fact, at this point, if the news media wanted to manipulate me, they could refer to a good thing or a thing I would otherwise be neutral on as controversial.
And get me on board.
Like,
for example, indicting the frontrunner.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
So, okay. And I've got a couple more articles pulled up here that I wanted to point to. And I don't think I've got them quite in the order that I wanted them to. Okay, GBI. Oh, okay. So, right. So we've got the article from CNN. One person was fatally shot and a state trooper wounded, blah, blah, blah. And we just read the story, and you had to get 3-4 paragraphs down before you see that they opened fire on the police.
Yeah, and let's be clear. One person who might not have even been a legal immigrant decided to open fire. A guy with known mental issues who might not have even been a legal immigrant opened fire on the police. Not just one person.
Right.
Anyhow, continue, please.
And then they're operating a blockade, right? See, they've put up fences and these tire walls and stuff. They're operating a blockade. And after the shooting, they went and distributed flyers around the communities where the officers who conducted the raid live. Right? This is doxing activity here. Like I've said on the show before, just like donating to an organization like this, you know what you're doing. You already know that what you're doing is you're funding their terrorism. When you conduct doxing operations, what you're doing is attempting murder. You're hoping that the information, you're doing it because you hope that the information will find a person who will take action on the information. And when you're doxing to an entire community, the likelihood that the person who takes action on that information is dangerous and crazy enough to actually murder somebody on your behalf is such a high probability, especially if you're in one of these leftist neighborhoods, that it cannot be reasonably said that your intent is not to find that one person that would otherwise be difficult to find, right? Probably one of the best examples that's easy to go back to and remember publicly, other than Tim Pool being swatted like 9 or 10 times last year, was the Zimmerman case, where Spike Lee doxed what he thought was Zimmerman's address, specifically to the new Black Panthers, who went to the house armed. And the only reason Zimmerman survived is that he got the address wrong. That Spike Lee got the address wrong. And so they showed up and terrorized this poor little old couple in Florida that was trying to blue hair snowbird their way through retirement. And they just got terrorized and harassed instead of murdered, which was the clear and stated intent. And just to, let's not to put too fine a point on this. This is from a little lefty shitbag website called Grassroots Thinking. But this is what the left is reading. GBI and Biden's FBI terrorizes nonviolent Defend Atlanta Forest movement to crush dissent for unpopular Cop City plan. This was posted on January 6th, right? So they're pushing that narrative that it's a nonviolent protest movement. Nonviolent protest does not include depriving other Americans of their right to the free access of public property, and it does not include burning shit down.
Yeah.
Right? We saw the fiery but mostly peaceful protests through the summer of love all throughout 2020. Let me tell you something. As somebody who has burned down some cities, I know, I've seen me do it. That is not a peaceful activity. It's fun. I'd do it again in the right circumstances. But that was literally a fucking war. That's when it's appropriate to burn down cities, is when you're conducting a fucking war.
See, but you touched on it, and Unverified Bear also touched on it. That's the thing. They are at war.
Yes. I know Tim Pool gets a lot of flack for saying Civil War, and
he has been saying Civil War like for a couple of years now.
You best to start believing in Civil War, son. You're in one.
I mean, look, he's got that compound up there in the Virginias. Like, he's kind of in that Civil
Tim
War
Pool, not
mentality.
Unverified Bear.
It'd be cool if Unverified Bear did have a compound up.
It would be, but he's British, or at least he's in Britain, London somewhere. He's over there on the other side of the pond.
Yeah, I'm clear.
Fish and chips and mushy tea and.
I thought it was mushy peas.
Mushy peas. That's what I meant.
So mushy tea. Bro,
tea's probably the only thing they get right over there. Am I right, Bear? Am I right?
Anyhow, mushy tea, dude. No. That's not how that's supposed to work at all.
Is that like when you pour out the end of the coffee pot and the filter didn't do its job?
No, Chris, the filter does its job. You just overfill the coffee pot. Like.
So, the last thing I want to talk about is RICO charges. What RICO charges are. And they touched on something down here. The
See, well, we're in a weird spot because this property is in DeKalb County, and for people that don't live in Georgia to understand, if the state of Georgia had a county, that would naturally be the headquarters for BLM. It would be DeKalb County.
Yes.
And read into that whatever you want.
Amazingly, though, DeKalb County has a vibrant and really effective Republican Party.
Vibrant, yes. Effective?
Yes. That they are doing some amazing shit.
Anyhow, but the point is
they're not winning local offices. But,
well, see, there you go.
But they are doing some pretty serious and impressive work over there.
Anyhow, but the point is, if there was a natural spot for BLM, DeKalb County would be it.
Oh yeah, DeKalb County is it.
Yeah. So it's not surprising that the DeKalb County DA went, well, gosh, we can't prosecute these people.
Right.
And that the state attorney general came in and said, yes, you can. And since you're not going to, I'm gonna. And because you obviously are not taking this seriously, we'll have a better shot at prosecuting this case in Fulton County. Fulton County's the same place Donald Trump's being charged with RICO by the Fulton County District Attorney Fannie Willis. Boy, this sounds like a soap opera already.
Oh, mother.
That's funny.
Yes, DeKalb is very diverse.
No, it's not. No, it's not. It's...
But, yeah, so she won't prosecute the BLM activists. Let's all be surprised for a moment.
Well, no, the Save the Forest activists.
Yeah, because they're completely unrelated. But RICO charges, let's talk for a moment about what RICO charges are. And I believe we are over the hour now. Yeah. So I want to talk for a minute about what RICO charges are, especially with relation to this and to what's going on with Donald Trump. And how the application of RICO charges is very different between the two cases. Now, in this article, the Cop City Vote Coalition said in a statement, these charges seek to intimidate protesters, legal observers, and bail funds alike, and send a chilling message that any dissent to Cop City will be punished. Does that sound familiar at all? So...
The bail funds part, no. I don't know how you intimidate
not the bail funds part, but...
Bad bail funds, bad!
Well, no, that actually makes some sense because so many of our currently elected Democrats, like Kamala Harris, have been directly funding bail funds for BLM protesters.
Jokes stop being funny when you explain them. I was just trying
I don't think I was explaining a joke.
Anyhow.
Okay, anyway. But the chilling thing is an important part of that conversation. So, what are RICO charges? RICO is an acronym: racketeering, intimidation, and corrupt criminal operations. It's the point to RICO cases is when you're dealing with organized criminal enterprises, the bosses never actually commit any crimes, right?
Do it.
Pretend like RICO doesn't exist yet. This was why RICO was invented. Before the RICO case was created, the fact was that the bosses never committed any crimes.
I didn't do it. Falcone did it. He even confessed to it. Falcone did it. Why are you looking at me?
So they'd have their guys conduct operations. Now, one could argue that they were engaged in the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act. Yeah, that I always have a hard time with it because of the way that influenced is stuck in there, because it's such a forced acronym. But anyway, so the whole point to RICO cases is you want to take a group where I just know that guy's dirty, but he hadn't actually done anything illegal. Or at least I can't prove he's done anything illegal.
So it already starts out on some pretty shaky ground,
right?
Constitutionally.
So we want to be able to arrest this guy who hasn't committed any crimes. Now, let's be fair. As shaky as it is legally and constitutionally for the RICO Act to even exist, there was a very compelling and interesting argument for a need for it, because you need some way that you can take down your Falcones, your Uncle Enzos, etc. Or they just keep conducting the operation, right? You take down all the knee breakers and chain shakers you want to, all the guys that walk into the bar and say, "Hey, nice place you got here. Shame if anything were to happen to it." The collection money guys and all that. You could take those guys down all day, and the mob boss will just replace them with another low-level thug. If you can take out the bosses, then you can get rid of that. So what RICO stands on shaky constitutional ground always. Now, where it's involved with the Trump case, I don't want to go too far into this, but we'll end up going into it in later shows where we talk about the indictments more. In the Trump case, they're kind of using RICO backwards. They fabricated charges against Donald Trump and then gone and made the argument that Donald Trump headed up this massive conspiracy, and therefore everybody that's under him can be charged with RICO. Part of what it means to be charged with RICO is you can be charged just with the crime of being associated with criminals, not the actual commission of a crime. Right? So where RICO gets really shaky and really shifty is, okay, you know what? We're going to go ahead and lock up the boss's barber.
Or lawyer.
And just hope that by hitting him with completely bullshit charges, we're not even charging him with anything other than knowing the target of the RICO case. And we're going to lock him up, essentially torture him, and try to scare some information out of him. Now, in fairness to Chris Carr, the way that he's using the RICO case here, it appears to be a more legitimate application, at least within the confines of the law, because he has arrested 61 defendants who have actually been engaged in crime, apparently in hopes of some of them leading the case up to target the larger organization. Now, it does look like, despite my argument that that people who give to causes like this know exactly what they're giving to, it does look like technically within the definitions of the law, they did conduct some illicit money laundering type of activity. That I can't wait to see how this shakes out in court, because they might actually be able to forward a pretty believable defense by saying, "Look, Your Honor, we didn't do anything wrong with, as far as how we raised money. We told a bunch of lefties that we needed money, and they knew we were going to buy bomb materials and bullets and kill a bunch of cops and burn down a construction site and blow up a bunch of expensive construction equipment. They knew what they were paying for. There's no fraud or misdirection. We didn't lie to anybody here. They knew exactly what they were paying for. Money laundering charges away." Right. I can't wait to hear that argument be made in court. And given the overall state of things, I do like seeing the RICO case being used here. I can't wait to see somebody sprout a sack and bring a RICO case against Fannie Willis and the other co-conspirators in the Biden crime syndicate election interference conspiracy. But for now, I guess we're just going to have to kind of console ourselves with something being done to correct the errors, omissions, and, let's face it, outright corruption of people like Sherry Boston, the DeKalb County District Attorney, who is choosing not to prosecute crimes because those crimes are being committed by people she agrees with.
Yeah, and I would just like to add, and I'll say this really quickly, there are people that have suggested that the timing of this coming right on the heels of the Donald Trump indictment in Fulton County by Fannie Willis under RICO charges. And I'm just going to say, no, I don't think that's what happened here at all. This is not a distraction. This is not a conveniently timed thing. This is a problem that has been going on literally here in Georgia for years. As we pointed out, there have been cases of arson and intimidation and violence, and members of this organization literally traveling dozens of miles away from the forest to intimidate law enforcement officers. And I actually think that's probably what brought it to the state attorney general's attention.
And let's not forget, many of these protesters are foreigners.
Yeah, look, and I think that's what brought it to the state attorney general's attention, was the fact that people were leaving DeKalb County to intimidate people outside of the county. So now you got a statewide crime going on with, terroristic threats. I think this would have happened anyway. And because of the nature of the cover that Fannie Willis used to conveniently charge Trump once the election season started to heat up is actually the real reason Chris Carr brought the charges when he did. He said, look, if I'm going to bring these kind of charges that are going to put several people in prison for years, I wanted to have all my I's dotted, all my T's crossed, because if I'm going to use the RICO statute, I want to make sure that it's done correctly. That's what happened here. This just happened to happen this way. I don't think there's any larger conspiracy at play.
Yeah, I agree.
Also, just one other thing. The reason why the RICO stuff is just makes me kind of nervous. For anybody involved in a RICO case, the caged bird sings because it wishes it was free.
Right.
And if you hem up 24 people on RICO charges, and you say, hey, first one to flip gets immunity.
Yeah, funny story. That caged bird may sing. That doesn't mean it's telling you the truth.
Exactly. And that's the other thing. Okay, what do you want me to say? Oh, especially when you're talking about 5 to 10, maybe even more years. Hey, ask...
Yeah, I will renounce God and grow my foreskin back. Just let me off the rack, Inquisitor.
Oh, golly, there's so many things. Oh, Jesus, I can't top that or go lower than that.
Nobody expects the Atlanta Inquisition.
The show just needs to end there. I'm done.
Y'all be safe. Thanks for watching. We love you, and we will see you tomorrow.